Now, you're at the College of Worcester, which is just downstate of here, a couple hours away, right?
Yes, we're pleased to be your neighbor.
Yeah, you've been there since the 1970s?
1977.
Since 1977. Can you give us a little kind of a encapsulation of your upbringing, your first exposure to music? How did you get interested in composing? I mean, did you come from a musical family?
Neither of my parents were musicians, but on the other hand, there was always music around the house. So my dad often sang. I learned a lot of songs through him, many that have stayed with me. And in addition, there were lots of good examples of recorded music that had fascinated me from early on. So that when I got to be about grade school age, I became interested in possibly playing music. And my first keyboard instrument of all unlikely possibilities was the accordion, which is not a fact I own up to all that often, but it was my starting place. And then later on in grade school, in the fifth grade, I began on the trumpet. And little by little, I think my involvement with music became kind of an obsession and a passion for me. I became very interested in getting more accomplished, and particularly on the trumpet, which became my main instrument. And I went through various stages of liking various kinds of music, but eventually was very moved by modern jazz. And this would have been modern when I was younger, so the jazz of the 1960s, for example, or so, the post-pop style, as it was then called. And in becoming very interested in learning how to write and play that music, I found that often I had to learn a lot about the innards of the music itself in order to make arrangements of it or transcriptions. So that's what got me involved with writing. And then when I got to the undergraduate experience, fortunately there was a very, very fine composer on the faculty of my undergraduate institution. His name was Elie Sigmeister, a very distinguished American composer. Yeah. And he helped me find the way a lot, too. So I'm indebted to all of those experiences.
You mentioned jazz, which I hear a lot in your piano works and on this piano music recording that came out not too long ago. I want to ask you about some of the works on there with pianist Frank Huang, who was, I guess, your colleague at Worcester, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now there are at least 3 birthday presents for your wife?
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
I keep trying to get it right. Maybe there'll be a 4th or a 5th, too.
Well, it must be nice to have a composer who can just dash off a nice piece of music in honor of your birthday.
Well, I don't know if she feels the same way.
But lovely recordings, lovely music, and my attention was immediately caught by this piece from the 1980s called 6 Pieces for Kelly. Kelly is your daughter.
Right.
And she was, 8 years old?
Exactly.
At the time, yeah, because I have a 6-year-old daughter at home.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And I think she would be enchanted by these pieces as well. But you designed these to be performed by young musicians?
Yes, I tried to keep them all very playable.
How did you introduce these pieces to your daughter? Did you play them for her?
Yeah, I would play them for her, and I think she actually studied 1 or 2 or 3 of them, perhaps, with her then piano teacher, who was a former colleague of mine at the College of Worcester also. So okay. I tried to keep in mind basically the fingering possibilities for very young people and to keep it very approachable if I could.
You seem to be a very modest person, and you have this sort of quietness about you, which I hear in your music, and especially in your orchestral music. Also a sense of optimism, which I find very appealing. I wonder if you have sort of a musical philosophy, do you set out to try to create a specific kind of music?
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm struck that you noticed that, because optimism and affirmation are qualities that I think are, at least to me, very important as a listener, and that I hope to achieve when I write music. And they're qualities that when I was studying music as a graduate student were, for the most part, not very highly valued and sometimes even conspicuously absent. So if we think of the music of the Expressionists or the Atonalists, for example, affirmation and optimism are not qualities that they held in high regard. Instead, rather alienation and estrangement and a kind of pessimism. So in that sense, I've always been kind of an outlier, I think. And it's for that reason that I've wanted to cultivate my own style, irrespective of what else was going on. And for that style, I found that using tonality and melodies, no matter how much they may be accused of being rather old-fashioned, were qualities that I still found very heartwarming and moving. And rather than try to do music that was more au courant with current styles and be academically impressive, I felt that it was important for me to write music that genuinely moved me, on the theory that if I wasn't moved by it, how could I expect anybody else to be? So, yes, in that sense, a kind of optimism is for me essential to my worldview, and I hope some of it finds its way into the music.
Did you find that being in Ohio and being in the Midwest and being in the culture that you were in kind of afforded you the opportunity just to do what you wanted as a composer?
Well, I think that probably everybody is afforded that opportunity, but that you're right. In certain high-pressure contexts, like, let's say, the new music scene in New York, it would be even more difficult to follow that kind of path. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, being in Worcester, Ohio, has been very good for me. I do think that's true. Also, being at the College of Worcester for so long, the college has been very, very encouraging and supportive, and made possible an environment where I feel like I can flourish and pursue my own voice without any thought of recriminations or overt criticism. That comes after the fact, after the music gets out there and released.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about your symphonic recordings, and why don't we just talk a little bit about that Symphony No. 2? Can you just paint a picture of that symphony for us?
Yes, the reason that I used the subtitle Ascendant for that symphony is that I hope that it might convey some sense, and please forgive me if this is overly fanciful or grandiose, but some sense of the aspirations of the human spirit to try to ascend to the highest level of accomplishment and affirmation and self-realization possible. That's a pretty tall order, but I hope that some of that would be perceivable in the symphony, and it helps to explain its very large-scale architecture, I think, and the way that it progresses in a kind of narrative where it has to struggle to achieve a kind of affirmation by the end. There's a danger in trying to write music of affirmation and optimism that one can go too far to an extreme and make it sound a little bit too safe and straightforward. In the Symphony No. 2, I tried very hard to make it a more involved and nuanced narrative.
Composer Jack Gallagher, celebrating your 70th birthday this month. I want to thank you for coming on and sort of raising a toast, as it were, with some of your music today. I hope we can talk more sometime down the road, because there's so many things to talk about.
I'd love to, Brad.
But I've enjoyed your company today, and again, happy birthday.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me aboard.